Morning, Eric.
Good morning.
I got something for you. I got a couple things.
Right off,
to get
hot
her
off
going.
the bat here, eh? I
Yeah,
like it.
well, I had something. I want to talk about a book I'm reading for a second, but before that, I just saw our supplement line sitting there, which brought to my attention last night. One of my nephews, he's been pumping iron for about a year. I gave him a couple programs, and he's just loving it. He's doing good now. He's getting to the point where it's like he work like anytime I go
Just
to the house.
the young one?
Maddie.
From SX? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So anytime I go to the house, like actually, anytime I pop in to see my brother-in-law, he's pretty much in the gym lifting weights.
Really?
Yeah, in the garage.
Good for him.
Yeah. He's
How
doing
old was
great.
he? 13, 14?
14, 15?
15. Cool.
Yeah, I think he's 15. And he's looking good, eh?
Yeah,
No,
that's
I'm
awesome.
not trying to be weird.
Yeah.
But he's looking great. And then my other nephew, my brother's son, Corson, is pumping iron like crazy too because he's a high-end lacrosse player. High-end. He's got something going on there. He's got kinds of offers and stuff. Anyways, my point to this being is Maddie last night asked me about pre-workout. So I don't know if I had the best answer, and that's why I'm bringing it up to you because we're just talking live.
Love it.
We're going to bring it, but yeah, I know.
I already love it.
And then maybe it's something. As I was thinking about this, maybe it's something we could talk about a yay or nay on supplements based on age and shit. You know, so he's 14, 15 years old, so he's getting into it. Hey, Andy, what do I take? He's protein shakes. So like when kids start working out, the protein shakes are the biggest thing. They think like this is it. This is the magic, right?
Yeah.
True?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, and they just like have to have the protein. Yeah, but it's awesome. Like, and for me, a lot of the times a supplement, sometimes the placebo effect. Not that I feel any better, but sometimes I know like if I take my greens in the morning, I'm doing something healthy. Like it's a
thing.
trigger.
Yeah, it's a thing for sure.
Vitamin D, I know I'm getting that supplement. You know, it's good. I'm taking care of it. The beetroot for me is I know it's the blood circulation and stuff, so it's like good basics. So my question to you, like when he asked me last night, do I take a pre-workout? I said, well, it depends. I said, for me, and I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm not trying to persuade you in any way because my brother-in-law was with me too, and he probably wanted me to say,
no,
you don't need that
Yeah.
shit, you know, right? But I said, you know, if it makes you feel like you're getting something out of it, good, I guess. I said, but I don't think it's necessary, and I understand you're on the creatine now too, and like, is it okay? It's like it's the best. So I was like, there are a couple things to be careful for, but I don't even know if it's dangerous. And this is where I'll admit where I get dumb. I said, you know, it was great though. I said, you got to look at the, and he goes, he goes, citrulline. I go, that a boy.
The kid knew it.
So he's reading it all, right? So like he's dialed right in,
Very
right?
cool.
He wants results.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not sure if it's that one or if it's the, what's the other tingly one?
Beta-alanine.
Beta-alanine. Yeah. So I was going beta, and he goes alanine.
Yeah.
I go, yes, that
Good
one.
for him.
I
That's
said,
great.
you can get the tingles. I said, I'm not sure if I ever got it because I've only used the pre-workout once or twice, and I never really found a real benefit to it because, you know, and I know that you use one. I don't know if you use it all the time, but
I cycle through it. Sometimes use it, sometimes I don't, but I cycle through using them. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, so I asked him, I said, do you feel better when you use it? He goes, oh yeah, I feel like I work out harder. I said, okay, so maybe it's good. And I said, I just don't know how to give you the advice because I'm not sure. I wouldn't say it's necessary. And I don't know. I don't even know if that stuff, I said, I'd probably stay away from some caffeine if you could. But I said, you know, to me, it's a 50-50 right now. And if it could be one of those supplements that, I mean, you could definitely go without. One of those supplements where this is where you can get in the cost you a whole bunch of money to work out, right? So just your thoughts on the pre-workout. And I know there's some that are real good, some that are shit.
Yeah, I could go, this is a big, huge rabbit hole because it's not, like you said, it depends kind of answer, and there's a lot of factors. To me, like when it comes to all supplements, just first of all, it's kind of like the new toy. It's like getting a new phone, getting a new stick, getting a new this, that. It's like sometimes you can put the cart before the horse, as they say. It's like you don't need to use supplements at all. You don't need to. They can be useful though, which is cool. So a lot of times I find, especially with kids, they start to hear about protein shakes, pre-workouts, creatine, and they think like that's the thing that's going to, like you're saying. And to start, it's like if you don't have the rest of your diet and like lifestyle in order, then supplements don't matter. They don't make a difference. So putting that aside first of all, like that's the first thing. So it's like if your diet sucks, if your sleep sucks, if all those things, start with that. And that's what I say with kids first, which is not what they want to hear. So
No, no, no.
I start by saying that as just like the caveat. And then it's like, if you're going to go buy supplements anyways, because I know you probably will, then like these are the kinds of things that you should look for. So I'm not going to get into like the like
No, no, no.
super nitty
No, no,
gritty,
I don't
but
want you to.
yeah, but I think the one concern that I have about supplements for kids that are, let's say, under the age of 20 is, and that's not like a scientific cutoff or anything. It's just that's what I kind of think. Um, a lot of them are just loaded with stimulants, which can be a really big problem. So I don't think kids should be using caffeine at all at any point of the day, just because um, you're already like hyper anxious, hyper stimulated, hyper everything when you're around that age. And to layer caffeine on top of that, it can really mess with your sleep. It can really make you feel like anxious and jittery if you don't have it dosed correctly. And then even if you do have it dosed correctly, just that you've never had it before, it's going to be something that is difficult for your body to handle. It might feel good using it, but it's still difficult for your body to handle at that age. And I don't like anything that potentially makes kids more anxious or messes with sleep. So that's my big thing, number one. But people are going to use it anyways. So there are pre-workouts you can get that don't use stimulants, which is a good option to look at. And then the other thing,
But are they effective?
well, this is the question is, what are you using the supplement for? And that is what the first question should be whenever using any supplement, right? So like protein, for example, the only reason you would ever need to use a protein powder is if you don't eat enough protein. There's nothing special about the powder. It's just protein. So yeah. So if you eat enough protein or you consume enough protein in your diet, then protein shake is not necessary.
Yeah.
But for a
It's
lot
a
of
quick calorie.
yeah,
Makes you feel like you did something.
yeah, outside of those
Yeah.
reasons, but you don't have to use it, right? So now if you go to a pre-workout that doesn't have a stimulant in it, now you need to start to learn about those other ingredients and what they do, right? So if you have something that has the citrulline in it and it's dosed properly, that gives you that nice pump feeling. It's the same effect that happens from you having your beetroot, right? It's the pump. It
Well,
helps
look
you
at
with
me.
the pump. Yeah. Yeah, right? Jacked up.
Yeah.
So
My
it's
face looks like a freaking tomcat right now.
yeah. It's the precursor to that nitric oxide, which is the same thing you get from beetroot, right? That's L-citrulline. So that helps with the pump feel. The beta alanine feel, that gives you the tingles. That's more of an endurance thing. And then some of them have creatine in it, which can be kind of like a sustaining energy type of thing. So there's a bunch of different ingredients that you can have. So they can be effective, to answer your question, if they don't have caffeine. All the caffeine does, or the stimulant, is make you feel that like alert. Now, some of them are starting to have more like nootropic things, which is like brain focus without the jitteriness of caffeine. There's ingredients that can do that. So they can be effective. But the key there, last thing I'll say is, if you're going to use a pre-workout, you want to make sure that they're dosed properly, because otherwise you're paying for a lot of nothing. But even having said that, like a lot of kids that have never had any of these things, if you take any amount, you'll feel a difference just because you've never had any of the ingredients. Like I remember when I didn't start taking pre-workouts until I was like into my 20s. And I remember like buying a shitty one from like Shoppers Drug Mart, and I would have it in the morning on my way to school, and it'd be like 6:15 a.m. I'm in my car and I'm just like bumping to the fact that I just got a whack of caffeine right off the hop in the morning, right? So those are my thoughts on it. Like you can use it if you want, but you just got to be careful with stimulants, and then make sure that the ingredients are actually dosed properly, which you'd have to do research to know, right?
Yeah. So you might find this funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
I could see you had a little smirk over
Well,
there.
I okay. Well, I don't know why I'm smirking.
There you go.
Because I asked you what time it was, and you
Oh,
told me how
I
the watch was
I know.
made.
And you know what's funny? You know what's funny is I had to really restrict going longer winded than that.
That's funny.
I know.
Yeah. So would you have to? So the other side of that is, like, if you have to give an answer that long. Not that I'm saying that you talk too much. If you have to give an answer that long, then it's probably not worth it.
I was literally just gonna say that, because it's like it's not, you want the answer to just be yes or no, and it's like you can take it, but I have to explain all these things to you about it.
Yeah. So I was saying that to my brother-in-law last night. I said, like, we had the director of health sports science for the Edmonton Oilers on one of our podcasts, and I said, like, for professional athletes, he goes, number one is sleep, number two is getting, eating properly, and then creatine and the beetroot powder. And
Yeah.
he
Those are the ones you
ended
like.
it there.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
goes, really? I go, yeah,
Yeah.
like, because all
He
the
said
other
he had
stuff
one where
is,
he said the tart cherry too.
yeah, the tart cherry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used that for a
Yeah.
while.
I know. I remember.
That's more for recovery.
Yeah.
So that would be good, but that's not sexy. That's not a big powder and all that stuff. The other thing, like, we're off on a tangent here. I'm going to end it after this. The other thing is that there's different quality of supplements, and you don't know what you're getting in every scoop in some of these companies. So it's and the other thing is we're going to have some people on here that are in the fitness industry that are going to want to comment for about 6 hours on all their thoughts on this, and it really was just a simple question for the youth. And I think, and just to take that maybe to more of a hockey thing, it applies to hockey in your nutrition and your training and your hockey stick and your skates and the tape you use and all that stuff. It's just a tool, right? And a lot of times people put so much emphasis on on the wrong things, rather than your back checking. I need a different hollow in my skates. It's like, how about just work hard? So, like, when you're doing your workouts and your training, whatever you want to call it, it's like, stick with the basic foundations. I'll always say that. And as a hockey player too, stick with have a good base foundation, and then everything can evolve from there. And the last thing, this is the last thing that I'm going to say last, is when you are in your teenage years, all the supplements in the world uh, will not equal the testosterone for a young man. You'll never match this time in your life, right? Like, till your mid 20s. It's like, so like, you've got the best juice in the world just by moving and
Yeah.
your testosterone, right?
When it's kind of like get as much of you as you can out of whatever you're doing before you start to add the extra things. Like I was explaining this exact thing on Monday. We were talking about just food stuff again, and I was talking about, like, if you built a little pyramid for yourself, like your fundamental, like your day to day nutrition is like 80% of the gains right there. Then eating and fueling around performance, like how you eat specifically around that, will maybe give you another 15. Supplements will only give you like another 5% or so, right? So it's not, a lot of times it's framed as like a make or break, and it's just not where you're going to get the main effect is going to come from just your day-to-day habits, like, by far. And they've even done that with studies on if you actually took like performance enhancing drugs, they're not as good as sleep. It's like, they don't, the effect of them is not as good as having quality sleep. Like, it's better than any drug you can take. So it's important to know and lay that out, because a lot of people try to jump to the thing that'll give them the quick, and adults do it too, kids do it.
We
People
all
are
do
just
it.
attracted to
We
that,
all do it.
right?
We all do it
Which
with
is
something, right?
understandable. Yeah,
The
for sure.
shortcuts in fitness, like, there's no shortcuts, right?
There's no shortcut,
you gotta eat right.
unfortunately.
You got to eat pretty good, and you got to move pretty good and often enough, and
You got to
sleep.
work
And
hard. Like,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
it. Like, you
yeah,
can't, all that extra stuff will just be giving you
yeah.
percentages on the
Well, it's,
edges.
just from like, we're talking about exercise there a little bit. It's so funny how, I, this is my world, your world, and it's still sometimes a punch in the face when I look, and let's say I'm trying to, let's trim up a little bit, and so you go that extra in the gym, like maybe it's 20 minutes longer, and it's like a good finisher, or you do a high intensity workout just to get those calories burned and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, that those calories burned are, let's just say you burn another 100 or even 200 in a workout, which is significant. 200 is a lot. So if you can get your workouts to, like, say, a 700 calorie workout, it's a good workout. If you do nothing else all day, it really meant nothing.
Yeah,
It
it's
melts.
irrelevant.
Yeah. So it's
Two
like,
pieces of
it's that.
pizza.
Yeah. It's
Right?
that. It's that daily expenditure of just moving around a little bit and stuff like that. So, like, but it's such a hard concept for people to understand, including myself. Not not including because I'm so smart and so great. I just, like, for someone that's in the business and understands it, it's like, if you just walk around all day, you're gonna burn so many more calories.
Yeah. It's funny because knowing better doesn't make it any less difficult. Because that's how I think too. It's like, I have the same. I know better. and I have the same struggles that everyone else has. Like sometimes I walk in the gym and I'm like, wow, I don't want to do this at all, you know. And it's like that with everything. Eating food, it's like I want to eat all the crap. I want to,
Well, that's
you know. It's
that's
always a grind.
that's my thing about knowing. You know, you don't know what you don't know. That's why you don't have. And to know and not to do is not to know. Just simply means like you know all the things, but if you don't do what you
Doesn't
know,
matter.
doesn't
Might as well
doesn't
not
mean
know.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's my say. I butchered it maybe, but
I think you got it. I think you hit
it
it.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
No one else will get it.
Yeah. What else you got?
Just real briefly, I started a book the other day about National Football League coaches, and for my buddy in Chicago that watches the podcast, Bjorn. It's all about coaches that are in the United States of America.
There you go.
There you go. He's
There you
happy
go.
now.
I
He's
know.
cheering.
He
He
likes
goes.
that
He
one.
thinks about me.
I know.
Really interesting. I love getting different perspectives because, for example, Luke Wilson is a very good friend of mine. Very good. I made it sound like we hang out every day. We're good friends. And he was in my office one day. We were talking, you know, we're shooting the shit, and he was talking about, you know, the big call that Steve Carroll had when they were in the Super Bowl, or was it the Super Bowl, or going to the Super Bowl? It was, and they could run it in. No, they could kick a field goal, and they decided to run it in, and it didn't happen. It didn't get to the Super Bowl, and everybody was like, "What an idiot! What an idiot!" And it's like this book kind of shows like where coaches come from, the work they put in, what they're responsible for, how they have to like they're responsible for the coaches, for the players, all that stuff, obviously, but the decision making and the decision making that has to happen within seconds that could win or lose a game, and with millions of people watching to judge. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. So I was just, when I was reading that last night, I'm sitting there going, that's one conversation we had that you could just sit there and go, what an idiot. Where he might have believed 99% or 100% that this play is going to work, right? There's always a chance. So it's like really interesting. So I'm getting a really neat perspective on coaching at that level. And I just thought I'd say that. And I'm kind of anxious to get through the book. Really cool.
That's the thing with it's so easy to be a hater for coaches because you don't see what's going on. So it's so easy to make the call from the stands, but it's like, why didn't you guys run the ball? It's like maybe the running back twisted his ankle and can't run. Like you don't know anything, right? You don't know. Maybe they have the analytics and there's a 65% chance that this play works and that's their best odds, right? And they're going with the analytics because they're an analytics style coach. It's like you don't know. So
and what a tough business, because you make one call, or you have season where you're winning and everybody thinks you're the greatest in the world. And you do one play like that, or you have a season where it's not going your way, it's like you're the biggest bum in the world. And it's not just a couple people saying, it's the media, it's the fans jump on board, you know, it's like,
especially at that level, like you don't realize how much information they have behind their decisions. Like the best example for me is when in hockey, when coaches pull the goalie, me and my mom would get into this, not debate, but like discussion every time because she can't stand when coaches pull the goalie. Yeah. Because she's like,
try being on a bench. Like, I know that's where you're going. Yeah. Try being on a bench where you're in an important game and you got guys rolling, whatever, and it's that time to make a decision. And you got one of your coaches saying, "Are we pulling?" And you're sitting there going, like, even though you're saying no, or maybe you didn't even think of it, now it's like, oh, should I? And it's just that one thing. If you're not 100% prepared, ready, and dialed in, or know exactly what you're doing and why, that it can create a little bit of doubt in you even before it happens.
And the way I try to explain it, because it's so funny watching it, because a lot of times the team will score on the open net. So like my mom's reasoning will always be like, they're all over them. Why don't they just leave the goalie in and just keep the pressure on, and then they don't just get a quick flip out and score a goal? And then I go, well, statistically, it's way more likely that they score a goal with an extra player than with 5-on-5. It's also much more likely that they score a goal, but that's the risk, right? You got 30 seconds left. You need to get a goal, so you're taking the gamble that it's more likely we score a goal with the extra player. So even if they score, it's normally still the right decision to pull the goalie because
it can be,
because you're more likely to score. Yeah. That's what.
So then there's the next decision. Some coaches say, you get the puck now, especially now. you get the puck, fire it to the net on the empty net. Whereas there's a lot more game management. And I could be wrong on this right now, but like this is my feedback that I'm getting from people is you fire at the net. And whereas before it's like let's make sure we manage this game. So like you don't fire, you get over the red line and fire it so the puck's down deep. And it's like now it's a debatable thing. But so here's the thing: you said the statistics. So I was just speaking with my son yesterday about scouting. Right? There's a lot of stuff. It kind of ties into this a little bit today. Um, we talked about this like with scouting. Like how can they pick a guy? He's no good. You hear that from fans and or even broadcasters and stuff. And it's like statistics, analytics. Like analytics aren't everything, but they're definitely something. So I was explaining that to my son last night. Like, or let's go back to like pulling the goalie, this, that, and that. Statistically speaking, this is your best thing. So like, it's hard to argue. And then the analytics on guys in those situations are like so, like especially at the national level, they're so detailed. Like everything about every player in every situation. If that guy can't win a face-off on the left side, let's get the face-off on that side. All that kind of stuff, right? This guy buckles under pressure, it shows. Whatever, right? This guy can't be out on a 6-on-5 or whatever. So I was just again telling him about scouting last night. Like you'll hear people like already like it's 2 games in the OHL, and we've got people ranked, teams ranked, power rankings. All that is to keep people interested. What does it mean? What does it mean? How can you tell me that this team is the best team in the league after 2 games, or this guy's ranked in the top 20? Like how? Like you can have maybe a guess, but you can't actually say that because things change. And so, anyways, as far as the scouting goes, it's like, how did that guy get drafted? It's like, guys, you don't understand. Like if you look at if you've ever seen, if I'm not saying it to you because I think we've went over it, but I've seen Instat and Sport Logic, and
It's crazy.
so
You wouldn't believe it. If you've
that's
never
right,
seen this, you would not believe
right. So
what
yeah,
they
yeah,
got.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. People
Like,
would not
they have
believe.
no idea.
So you
Yeah.
might think, how many times you watch? Like, and it blows my mind. Like when I start thinking about it, right? So you think of a team or a player. We're looking at Eric Palazzolo. Okay, you're a right winger, right? More or less. Yeah. All right, and everyone thinks that you're not bad. You're not bad, and you get drafted in the second round in the NHL, and people go, "What the heck?" Well, okay, so by the Philadelphia Flyers. Why them? I don't know. Philadelphia grabs you in the second round. People go, "What?" Like, there's way better. It's like, okay, like think about this. You have all those scouts watching. You got central scouting from the National Hockey League. Then you got the team that have scouts all over the place watching every game. Do they see every game? Most people would say no. But the answer is actually yes. Not only see every game, they see every shift, and they can break everything that you do down into whatever they want to see. So when you say, yeah, but he's not physical, you don't think they know that, or maybe they have different data because we can punch in now. Take we're the Philadelphia Flyers, and I'm the general manager. I might be the president of the team. I might be the director of hockey operations. I might be the scouts, player development guys. You talk about maybe 25
It's a
different
network,
people
man.
saying we're very interested in these 20 guys. We're watching every shift of every. We want to see if his D zone is good, and all they have to do is say D zone, and break down what part of D zone they want to see, and they could watch every D zone play you've made for 2-3 years, and they could watch your shooting, and they could watch your checking and your tracking and your forecheck and all that stuff. So if you think that they don't have a clue or they're stupid, no, that's what they wanted. You know what I mean? So they know exactly who you are. So now take that to a player, and Instat isn't just for the NHL. It's at levels of hockey, right? Like the OHL college, junior B, junior A, they have access to certain amounts of Instat. So when you think a player got drafted to the OHL, it's the same thing. You can go to Instat or whatever you have video,
Something close,
and
yeah.
you're going to be able to take analytics and
Right.
look at a player, man.
Well,
Like,
just
it's crazy.
for some perspective, like for the OHL, I remember we were looking at Instat. We watched every single one of Charlie's hits for the whole year. They had them clipped into like 5 to 10 second clips of every hit, every pass, everything is broken down. So you're telling me that they have if all I want to see is how well does Charlie hit, I can just sit there for hours and hours and hours and just look at the hits. I don't have to watch any of the other parts of the game. I don't have to watch anything. I don't have to watch anything.
Or you talk to you're doing your interview, and we think you're D zone. I'm interviewing now. We think you're D zone. Could use some work. What do you think? I think my D zone's pretty good. Click.
Yeah, click.
There's 70 different clips of your D zone. Do you see what we're talking about?
We watched all of them. Did you?
Do you think you back check hard?
Yeah.
Do you think your efforts? You can't lie. You can't even lie.
Can't lie.
Can't even pretend.
I know, and that's why people don't know that. So it's funny when you hear certainty, but then on the flip side, and this is why you need to have a coach, because there's certain intangibles that the analytics won't show. Like if you get your fourth liner who's just hot today, you don't have any stats. How does he perform in the last minute of the game? You don't know, right? But he's hot today, so I'm making a call, send him out, see what happens, right? That would be going against like the analytics part, but that's why you need guys that are boots on the ground that can make a decision in real time, right?
100%.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, which I digress now.
No, yeah, but that kind of, both of those topics actually, the supplement thing and the scouting thing, kind of play into the topic today. So good for you, I guess. Good for you.
But anything could play into anything.
I know, because we just could twist it. We just twist it to make it work anyways.
Hey guys, my name is David. For the last roughly year or so, I've been a member of the PowerTech podcast, and I've trusted Eric and Andy to help me as a hockey dad, raising my kids and trying to figure out the answers. I don't have all the answers, and it's a great source of information, and it's an area where I feel comfortable leaning on to help me make better decisions. With that said, one thing I do know about is supplements. I find it's hard to navigate the whole supplement world and make sure that you're using products that work, that are effective, and again, are science research based. Blue Star products, incredible brand. Their products are based on research, science. The products work, trademark patent ingredients, and you can find all of the research just by scanning QR codes that are right on the back of the product. Thank you to Eric and Andy for their podcast. I think it's amazing, and definitely give Blue Star products a try.
Okay, so we had a clip that went pretty viral, which is kind of nice because it's always interesting to see that happen. So it was about puberty, and it was about how puberty can affect kind of development in youth sports. We kind of kept it general for you because it's not just hockey; it applies to not even just sports. Actually, it goes beyond that too. But for us, things that we talk about is normally in the context of sport and hockey specifically. But it obviously touched on something that is of interest to a lot of people, and I think it is an underappreciated factor that plays into youth development. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand how big the impact is of going through puberty when you're in those critical development years, let's say 12 to 15, 16, past 16, but that's normally when it starts to like even out. But between that window of 12 to 16 years old, let's say, it is really, really, really interesting to watch how different kids will either go up or go down in how they're performing because of the effects of puberty. And I remember going through it, and I remember there's not a lot of talk about it that I remember, just more or less because it's just an uncomfortable topic, even for kids. Like I remember being insecure about it, like just the fact
that
it was...
Are you saying it's uncomfortable or hard to talk about because it's hard to talk about, or because people maybe don't even recognize that that's a thing?
I think that the talk among adults is that they don't actually understand the effects, number one. And then it's difficult to talk about with your kids because kids are insecure about going through puberty, because I remember going through it. And I remember if anyone commented on my voice getting deeper, or if I had armpit hair, it was like awkward. I didn't want to hear that. You know, I'm literally feeling the awkward saying that because I remember being a teenager. Yeah, I remember going through it as a teenager, like, so like stop drawing attention. Or if you get acne, like these kinds of things, like it can be like a source of insecurity. So it's hard to talk about with kids.
Growing a duster.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because I literally remember people commenting on it to me, and me being like, just stop. Like, we don't, why, you know what I mean? So I think for those two reasons, either lack of understanding the effects on the part of adults and how it can impact their performance in a sport or in anything. And then for kids, just because it's such a source of insecurity, it's hard to understand what's happening to you, right? Or to put that in context. So I thought it would be a good idea to dedicate a full episode to it today, because obviously it's something that people are interested in. And I think that as we walk through some of this stuff, I think it'll help people understand like the physical part of it, but also just the mental part of it from the kid perspective, especially for me, just because I'm like relatively fresh out of it. Like I still remember like
Just
fresh
out of it.
just out of puberty.
Yeah,
Right?
Good job.
Yeah. So I still remember all those feelings. Like I remember being there and like all that stuff happening. It's not like too far gone. I don't know if you still remember.
I'm
but
still in it.
yeah.
I wish.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
right.
wanted to. I'd like to be 2 inches taller.
Do you remember that though? Do you remember going through that time and remembering changes or not really? Or was it just something you didn't pay attention to? Because that could be
No,
another part.
no, I did. I paid attention to it, but it wasn't necessarily bad. But what it was for me, it's my good friend. I'm not going to say his name because he watches the podcast all the time. Wouldn't want to incriminate him, Jono. Um, we were in minor peewee, and this could be the whole podcast right here. Minor peewee. Jono had a hairy chest, thick, hairy legs, shaving. 12 years old. And for me, and he could shoot the puck, man. And he was skating. It was just like he was amazing at 12 years old. And he was 5'9". That's a big peewee. And actually, Jono was like the talk of Ontario. Like I was like the skilled, good player, and I was like a little pissed, not pissed with Jono, but I was like,
Like a little envy, a little.
well, I
jealous,
was
yeah.
like, hey man, this guy is like, he's pushing. He might be better than me right now. Like, but no, he's not better than me, but he might be. And people were talking about him because he was big and he can rip a puck and hit the glass. He was probably laughing. He listens to this all the time. And I remember in the dressing room going like, and then I noticed he was hairy and stuff, but I didn't know what that meant. But it was all I knew was I want to get that now. How come I didn't get that? And like when that first hair popped out, I was like, yeah. And there was 3, 4, and then like that summer balls,
Yeah.
whatever, right? And then I couldn't wait to shave like because Jono was and stuff like that, like so whatever. And then but then it evened out. Then Jono was so Jono ended up we're about the same height. Things catch up and everyone ends up shaving and everyone gets strong and Jono was like the best to like pretty good to like always pretty good, but like not exceptional as he was. But I remember in Pee Wee and early Bantam, Jono was like probably like considered one of the best D in Ontario.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is exactly kind of what I want to go into and how these things can affect like just the different trajectories. Because once you understand a little bit about what's going on,
Yeah,
it's
you can
easier
be very helpful.
as I was just gonna say, it can be really, really helpful. Not just for you as a player, but as a parent trying to help and be supportive.
Scout,
right?
coach, everything.
It's like because some people don't realize like I have a million examples, and so do you, of the guy that just developed early, and they're just better because they have physical traits that are just developed, right? Maybe they're fast first, they're strong first, they can hit first, they can shoot the puck hard, but all of those things, everyone has that once you're 16 and up. Like everyone's big enough, everyone's strong enough, everyone can shoot the puck well enough, everybody can stick handle, everyone can skate. All of those things even out once you're into junior and beyond college and pro, right? So the difference makers become other things that aren't just the physical traits, right? Then you obviously get the exceptions of like the huge guy that even as an adult, they're just much bigger or they're much stronger, whatever. You get the genetic freaks or the guys that are just faster and those kinds of things. But a lot of the differences that you might not notice at the youth level come down to just this puberty. This is what's going on right now, So if you want, I don't know if you have any other like opening things you want to say,
I do.
or you want to go for, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I wanted to make this like kind of clear because based on the comments, like I wanted to say like when this came out, it just started going like people are touching on it, like on our podcast from, it wasn't about puberty, but we touched on it. And this was like from 10 or 15 episodes ago. And so it's like, it's not recent, but we saw the comments and we wanted to touch on it again. But what I noticed with a lot of the comments is and this is what I want to make clear right away, is a lot of people were looking for like, yeah, what can we do about this? Should we take the age groups and mix it up? It's like, so it's like people take it as it's like an unfair thing, but it's not good or bad. It's how you deal with this or how you, your attitude and how you work around it or work through it. It's not about making a fair system because here's the thing, right? like, so my kid, like, there's a few kids actually in Guelph. There's quite a few late birthday guys. So obviously it doesn't hurt, right? Um, but so if those guys played, if they're December babies, okay. So if we say, well, we should maybe move it to June. Well, now they're the older guys. So is that better or worse, right? Do we mix age groups, or like it can be very convoluted? I mean, I think the world does the best they can. So then the next thing that people would say is like it's very dangerous, and I would say to a degree it can be, but to the other degree it's almost your advantage to be the late bloomer. Is that
Yeah.
controversial?
Well, no. I want to highlight that because that's such a good point. Like, because I remember a lot of those comments were that like it's unfair, change
Yeah.
this, whatever.
You know what I was saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You read
And
that.
that's
Yeah.
what I want to clarify because we've seen both sides. We see the guys that are like they develop early and they just stay good, and they got an early advantage because they developed. Yeah, they because they got that early advantage. Maybe their confidence goes through the roof. Maybe then nobody can catch them because they got that early boost, right? We've seen the exact opposite, where you get the guy that got the early boost, he was much better, and then just falls off a cliff when they're 15,
That's
right?
why I laugh when guys get college commitments early, when they used to get those. Like, how do you project a kid that's 13, 14 years old and you're going to be a college player, and all of a sudden at 17, 18, when it's time to go, they go, no, no. It's like you were good when you were like, or you stood out more, or maybe you were exceptional at 13, 14 years old, but then you haven't really gotten bigger, stronger, better. You did more intellectual, more, you don't have more of a brain. Like, your hockey hasn't evolved. You've
Right.
stagnated.
Absolutely. And
So
so
your
that's
best years are at 16.
yeah, and that's a great point. And then we get opposites, right? We get the kid that doesn't hit puberty early, so he's behind and stays behind and never catches up. And then you get the kid that was a late bloomer, gets that little feisty gene in him, and then all of a sudden is awesome 4 years later than everybody else. And so the point being is like life kind of works itself out. It's not that either way is inherently unfair. And those differences in the game or the size of the kids, whatever, you can't eliminate that. That's always going to be there, right? Unless we just say you can't play. This is the 5'5" league, and this is the 5'8" league, and you can't do that, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah. So that was the one thing I wanted to make sure that,
yeah, for sure.
that people,
Great point.
because people will comment, it's like, but it's not safe. And like, I understand the concern. Trust me, I do.
Mhm.
I do. But there's ways around that, and it is what it is. And I think if you play a game like, and I could be wrong about this, but I think if you're in boxing, weight matters and age matters. I think in football, I think that direct contact could be catastrophic, but maybe it's not any
Well,
different than
I've said
hockey.
this.
I don't know.
I've said
Maybe
this
it's
before.
maybe it's here anyways in the brain.
Yeah, because I've said this before too. It's like when you're signing up for any sport that has any physicality to it, like there's just inherent risk to that, right? So it's like, okay, you want to have no risk to anything? It's like, don't ever ride your bike then. Don't ever get in a car. Don't, you know? So it's like there's certain risk associated. You're signing up. So no matter what you do in your life, you're going to be deciding how much risk you're willing to tolerate, but there's always risk to a certain degree, right? So whether it's unsafe or not, it's like, yeah, but you're kind of signing up for that by playing the sport. So play a different one if you don't want that particular risk to have to deal with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So, anyways, not good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's good and bad to both.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so what I would like you to do is, because I know you had like maybe a couple points, just quick hitters to start off with, and then I want to go into like physical changes versus mental changes and touch on some of those things, and then we'll like wrap up with a couple like kind of common questions at the end. So I'll let you start off with that, and then we'll go to something else.
this is 2 or 3
Sure.
comments that I would have about puberty, and I this could be really short or a fair
Whatever.
bit of time,
Yeah.
and I think I'd like to take the time.
Sure.
Number 1, hitting puberty early or late, both is a curse and a blessing. Both. Okay. The second one I would have is habits. Habits, when you are in puberty, like as a hockey player, your habits will get you through, will make all the difference. That's what I have to say about that. Now, let me talk about the curse. I didn't need to write it down. Let's take an early bloomer, the curse and the blessings. So how, if you look at being a hitting puberty, that word, you know that word, puberty. If you hit that early, how the heck could that be a curse? Well, here's to me what the curse is. I'm going to back it up a little bit. I was talking to a GM the other day. I was curious about a player drafted early second round in the NHL, big, good. Said, can you just, as we're talking, can you just walk me through why he's not in the NHL? And I said, I have my thoughts. He goes, yeah. He goes, one of the biggest problems, he scored 50 goals a couple times in the OHL. I go, yeah. So a lot of people say, well, that's good. Habits. So here's a big boy. And I was on this exact same page as this GM. Is a big boy that didn't necessarily have to use his physicality. He had some skill. So the habits he created in major junior hockey that got him to a second round pick, he didn't develop the bite. So going into the National Hockey League, which is a whole different level, that size he needed to use, and he doesn't have that in him. So he thinks he is the 50 goal scorer, but at that level, he's not that at all. He'd just be a good, solid, great player. But because his habits aren't that, he was released and he signed with someone else, but it's going to be in the American League. This is like going into year 4. So that's what I'm talking about, the curse. So let's just use it from a puberty standpoint. So if you're what it simply means, and you could be really, really, really good. Like, I'm not saying, like, I would make this really clear too. Eric Lindros probably hit puberty fairly early, right? I think Shane Wright did. He had a beard ever since he came out. Right. They're really, really good players. Like, but Eric Lindros is one of the best. He was the biggest. But so this is what I would say the curse is that you're so good early, and he's the extreme because he was still an amazing, like a superstar NHL guy, like no matter what you say. But that would be the exception. But like when he played in the OHL, I think for me, he was the best player I've ever seen in the OHL. Like one of the best players I've ever seen. Run guys over and crazy. So he was good, strong, had the presence, go out there and control the puck. Like, that's all good. But the curse to me was he was just bigger. And I want to be clear. I'm not carving him at all because he was like a superstar. But the puberty thing and the size thing and everything levels out. So I'm not saying he didn't work hard and all that stuff, but what I'm saying, some of the habits that he had ended his career. In junior, when he would go, he had the ability to, I'm not saying his head down, but like take risks, make risky players, and he was going to run guys over until you get to a point where you find your Scott Stevens and guys like that can meet you at center ice and damage you back. So the curse for him was, like, to me, was that lesson, or that never was taught to him at a really early age. Because if someone tried to open ice hit him, they probably ended up on their ass looking at the lights. So that would be the extreme. So, but the next one would be the kid that's pretty good, that hit puberty at 13, 14, 15, 16. They just look really, really good, but you can't be fooled.
Yeah, because I don't want to say, I think instead of saying they look really, really good, because I think for some people you can tell, like, the details aren't there or whatever, but they look really dominant.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right? Without necessarily looking like they're good. People that don't know any better would think, yeah, they look like they're really good.
He's a beast.
Yeah, he's a beast. But it's like they're dominating a game. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good. Right?
But this is what I'm saying. Yeah. So like it takes a little bit of, like, when you see a good 13, 14-year-old player, it's like, it's great to see. But like for me, I can pick that out. Like, you know that. I can pick that out in 2 seconds. Like, yeah, he's bigger. He's hairy. And you can see it because his shot's harder, but the mechanics are like, they're not great. The skating's okay. The decision making is like that's not going to translate unless he really focuses on the game. So my point is, the curse is you're bigger, and then the other side of that is you think you're working hard, and you might be, but are you? Compare that to the younger guy, the smaller kid that doesn't have a hair on his nut, that's just giving it everything just to keep up. That's working hard. So that's what. Do I need to say more about that part?
No, just let me bottle it
Yeah.
up. So I think kind of what you're saying is the reason that it can be a curse is because you can get away with things that aren't necessarily the best way of doing things. So because I'm
And
bigger,
you can do it without 100% maximum effort.
yeah. So you can have poor habits. You can maybe not try as hard as you need to. Not that everybody does this, but for certain guys that hit puberty early, you can just get away with maybe poor habits or doing things a certain way that doesn't actually work once the competition is equal. But because you can just dominate physically, maybe because you're faster, maybe because you're stronger, maybe because your shot is just harder.
You're not worried about going that corner.
Yeah,
you're not worried about getting hurt.
Exactly. So, like, let's say, for example, your shot is just harder, like you're saying. I can shoot wrong, but just because my shot's hard, I could score a bunch more goals. I can get away with the bad habit of my shooting mechanics because I can make up for it with my shot power because I've hit puberty first, right? So if I'm summarizing that, what you're saying, it can be a curse just because you can get away with more, where at the high levels, those things are going to be exposed. And you'll see from minor hockey to the OHL, you see kids drop off for that reason. From the OHL to pro or minor pro or whatever, you see guys drop off for that reason. College, same thing. Guys that you could get away with some habits that weren't actually what you needed to be doing to be a good hockey player, just because you could compensate from puberty, from the fact that you developed sooner. Is that so? That's kind of a summary, right?
And then the curse continues though, right? Because and it doesn't mean it always happens. I'm saying like
Right.
this is what can happen if the habits.
We're talking about the negative
the
side.
habits, and you don't realize what's going on, and the work ethic isn't there, and all of a sudden, if you're not prepared for being a dominant 14, 15-year-old, when people catch up in like the game, or you're playing against guys that are older, like say OHL or something like that, and now the work actually happens. Like this might be the first time you've seen it where it's like total effort.
Right.
Like in the gym, you're not as strong as everybody now.
So okay, so sorry to cut you off. Just so if we think about that example now, it's like maybe I haven't had to work so hard from the time I was 12 until I'm 16. Now I go to my OHL camp. I haven't had to work hard yet. So now you get there, but the other kid that had to work his bag off this whole time, he goes into his OHL camp already having the work ethic, right? So there's one example of where you can see like, okay, this guy, if I'm a coach or I'm a GM or whatever, I'm like, I don't know if this guy's got it, but this kid who's younger looking, let's say, or younger, not as developed as you, he might be worth more of a gamble because I can see that he's got some habits, right? That's a really good point.
Yeah, and then like that, and then it's like that curse again is like when you come to Jesus and you realize that you're not dominant, you're average, that it takes that much harder work to produce. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Maybe you go, okay, I can put this together, but if you've never done it before, can you?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you
now
feel
you're
like
the late one?
do you feel okay? So it's that, and it's like, yeah, but now the coach says, okay, I need you to dump pucks in, I need you to block shots. It's like, yeah, no, but I score goals. Like I do that. It's like that's what could happen, right? So that's what I'm talking about. The curse. So the curse of being good early, physically dominant, all that stuff. At some point, things catch up. Now you have to have habits, and if your habits aren't there, then it's tougher to change. It's not impossible. So your desire needs to be good, and like again, some of the kids that and many kids have hit puberty early, and they have the everything it takes to do it, and they're just that good too. But then there's a lot of people that they're the next ones are the can't miss guys that miss. And a lot of it has to do with that, and they just didn't process that. I'm just bigger right now. It's like me playing pee wee hockey right now.
Yeah, right.
I'd be pretty good.
Yeah,
I think. It'd
remember
be
the
slow, but
remember the conspiracy theory about Nail Yakupov? How they were saying he's because he was in the OHL and he looked like he was 40 years old already. They're just like, there's no way this guy's. So he goes first overall in the NHL, and then he gets the NHL, and all of a sudden he can't do anything, right? So that was like validating the conspiracy theory about maybe he was like actually 24 or something, right?
Well, and if I was scouting and if I ran a team, And if I was a parent, that I would look at that, and I do, and I would say, okay, so there's gotta wonder how much ceiling there is. Gotta wonder, right? And then you're really looking at the habits and the little details. So then on the other side of being on the early bloomers is there's also the blessing. And the blessing is that when you're young and you're dominating, I mean, that's a confidence booster. And especially if you do the things the right way and you're willing to work and you maybe even recognize that, you got a good supporting cast around you that says, like, you understand that working hard and smart and understanding the game is going to be critical. Like, so it's like, it's not, I hope I don't sound like I'm pissing on someone that hit puberty at 6. It's
Yeah.
fine. It is
Yeah.
what it is, but you have to understand that eventually everyone becomes men, or big strong teenagers, or whatever you want to call it. And it's a big world, and you're taking the best of the best from all over the place. And it's like, if you have a lot of good habits and you're doing the things properly, then that you have a confidence already. That's the blessing. That's the blessing. You get a head start. You get to try things. So, like, maybe guys are a little bit scared of stepping up on you, so you can try going between the legs, or doing some fancy shit, which might turn out to be a good thing for you, right? Because you got good hands and stuff. But that's one of the
Yeah,
blessings.
I think the thing that I notice most with a lot of kids that develop early like that, if the timing is just right, they get the early hype, right? And the early hype can actually be very beneficial because it can follow you for years, even if you don't perform. Like I've seen guys,
Got to give them a chance.
yeah, right. Like at 15, 16, you were super dominant, and then you maybe get drafted to the OHL, maybe you get drafted high, and you start to fall off because you developed early, whatever. But they're just going to give you another chance. They're just going to give you another chance because they remember how dominant you were, and they want to see if you still have that, right? So, whereas the guy that didn't have that early hype, you kind of have to earn it. You have to kind of earn every opportunity just by default, right? And that's where you get. I'm not saying every first or second rounder is a guy that hit puberty early, but that's kind of what that benefit is for if you're a first, second round pick. It's like you automatically get the belief. Like people believe in you automatically because you're that high pick. And if you were a guy that hit puberty early, you kind of get some of that same treatment because you were dominant, and now you get to the benefit of having a little more leash, right? So that's an important point too on the positive end with that.
Yeah, and then so you go to the late bloomers and you do the same thing. I mean, I probably don't have to go into many detail, but this is why I really do like the late puberty guys, the late bloomers, maybe even late birthdays, because even if you're just a late birthday, that's like when you talk 13 years old, that's a big chunk of that kid's life that he's behind, right? Socially, like the whole bit. So what I like the curse on a so let's go with the curse first. The curse on a late bloomer is that it's just not easy, man. And and, and now let me clear that up. Some late bloomers or late puberty guys, you'd never know the difference, except you'd say they're kind of small, or they're you know they're raw, whatever the word is, but they might be really good. But it's like that's where they create doubt is created, mate, right? So the curse is also like you actually just have to work hard, 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 maybe to keep up. And the other curse is just socially fitting in, and psychologically, or confidence. It's as you're looking at all those things, like, am I good enough? Like, why do I have to work so hard, and all that kind of stuff. Um, and sometimes you may get overlooked when you're young, because you're just, maybe it's because you're small, or I'm not even saying you're no good, but sometimes you're not good enough yet because you're just that 9 months behind, or you're just whatever, you're not strong enough yet, or whatever. Um, so that to me is the curse. Obviously, I could go on forever, and then the blessings of it though is like, to just flip the script, is like you've learned how to work real hard. You've learned how to, no matter who you're going with against, more or less, is this is going to be like boy versus, not boy versus man versus boy, but it's like maybe a year or two older than me every single time. So you got to learn how to really push back, how not to be scared, how to maybe think better. And so the blessing on that is, once you catch up, if you continue and work and you have good habits, then once it evens out, that's why you see these guys just, whoa, where'd this guy come from? Like, so I was listening to Zach Whitecloud talking about his, like, he won a Stanley Cup, talking about hockey, and he said, there's nothing in me that thought I'd be a pro hockey player. He goes, my goal was to get to college. And he goes, that was like, never played AAA. And he just played. And I don't know if it's because he was a late bloomer or a puberty guy, but the bottom line is that he just kept playing and developed. And he's a really good D. Whereas you look at guys in that draft class, it's like first round picks, and you go, not even close. So the reward is huge if you persist and get through it.
No, that's a great message, man. I think the reason that whole discussion right there is super helpful, because now, like, if you notice that your kid is on the early end in terms of the puberty curve, you can start to reinforce some of these things, like, yep, but just make sure you're working hard. Yep, but just make sure you have good habits. Yeah, but like you're dominating, but are you dominating in the right way? Are you dominating by doing the right things, or are you just overpowering people, right? Like, these are things you can start to talk about with your kid. And you don't even have to necessarily talk about it in terms of puberty. You can if they're receptive to that. But like I said at the start, I remember being insecure and not wanting to hear that conversation. So you can find ways to say, well, yeah, but like, look, like, you're a lot taller, right? So you have an advantage. So make sure you're not just like taking advantage of that advantage, right? Make sure you're still doing things the right way. And then the flip side, if your kid is on the early or the late end of the development curve, then you can empower them, and by reminding them, like, yep, you're gonna get yours though. Like, you're gonna get yours. So just keep being a dog, man. Like, keep being a dog. You're gonna get yours. And that can be a way where, if your kid is struggling, they can start to, build a little bit of an identity as that feisty guy, or that guy that wants to battle, and they can kind of buy into that, because they know, like, I got to work a little harder because these kids are a little bit bigger or whatever. And you can flip it into a positive instead of being like frustrated and always negative, like, I can't keep up with these guys, yada, yada. It's like, you can turn it into something that is empowering for them, right? And then the other thing I just want to mention too is, like, it's not that your kid is going to be one or the other either, because I'm thinking of myself.
Yeah, there's medium guys.
I was the medium guy. I was like, I wasn't late, I wasn't early. I had a late birthday, but in terms of like my growth and development, yeah, I was like I was never short. I was always actually a taller kid. I think the puberty thing hit me a little bit later than a lot of kids, but I never had like a big jump. I never had a big spurt. I was just kind of like slow and steady, and I was like right in the thick of things the whole time. So like, if you're looking at your kid, like, I can't tell, like, I don't know, they might just be right in the middle. Like, they might be that slow and steady kind of thing. So I just want to mention that.
Yeah. So at the end of the podcast, I'm going to probably mention that again, but like, to me, it's important. So I just want to touch on the habits again. That's why your habits are everything. Cheating habits, cheating the process, cheating the work that goes into it. That's the recipe for failure. So it doesn't matter, to your point, it doesn't matter if you're early, late, or right in the middle. The point is that it's not about, it's the process, not the outcomes, right? If you every single shift, whether you have hair in your nuts or you don't, are back checking as hard as you can and learning when to maybe pick a guy up, like, you're learning the game, but you're doing it hard, whether you're 3 year old, if you're physically 3-4 years older than someone or not, that's a good habit that will stick with you. If you forecheck and you always go into the corner hard and you have intelligence that go with it, those are good habits. If you shoot because you're stronger instead of making the right play, that's a bad habit. So if the habits are good, then it all doesn't matter. And then as far as a safety thing, a lot of people are concerned about, you can get hurt. Well, I find that to me, it doesn't matter how big you are. I know this is gonna, some people say no. I know, I don't want to say it like that, but the kids that understand how to play with their head up, that understand, and this is maybe sometimes parents or coaches need to teach, is like, learn how to protect yourself. But if your head's up and you play with intelligence, you don't get hit hard too often unless you design it. And learning how to, if you are small, that you could take a hit and roll off them. You learn how to protect yourself in that way, getting your stick up. different things like that. So it's the safety thing. I'm not really worried about that. To be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree. So I want to talk about a couple specifics about what can happen with puberty, just so people have a little bit of a, a tangible thing to grab onto when judging the situation.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, first one. We'll go talk about physical things first because these are the most obvious. First is like body proportions, coordination. So, you can have growth spurts that make you feel uncoordinated again. I was just talking to a dad last night. Kid was on the treadmill. I was like, yeah, he hit a growth spurt, and now it's like his stride's all weird or something like that. Which, to a degree, yes, maybe some people panic a little more than they need to, but that can happen where like all of a sudden your legs are longer, so now you don't exactly know how to move your legs the same way, or your balance is kind of off. So it can affect those things because you're not used to that frame anymore. So quick growth spurts can affect that kind of thing, right? So you shoot up 3, 4, 5, 6 inches in a short period of time. It's not as the same as adapting to like small changes, right? So that's the first thing. If you can interrupt me at any point if you have something to say. So that's the first thing. Second thing is obviously like the hormonal changes. So this is where what we talk about, where you start to get that testosterone, where the muscle mass starts to come on, the bone density goes up, and you just get stronger because of those things and you didn't really do anything to earn that. It's just that's what happens when you get the testosterone. And this is why when people ask me about training, the age of training is normally, I say, once you hit puberty, because now you get those hormones where you can start to see the growth and you can capitalize on that period of time. It's literally like you're on steroids. That is actually what it's like for boys turning into men.
What do adults do when testosterone gets low?
Yeah, they take some
TRT.
Yeah, right.
Like not they do.
Yeah,
but that's an option. You don't want to have low testosterone.
right. Exactly. So that's what happens when you're in the puberty years. That's why the most growth you will ever see in your whole life, if you don't take performance enhancing drugs, is going to be during puberty, right? Once that is done, you don't continue to see that growth for the rest of your life, right? So if you hit that earlier than somebody else, then obviously the strength that can come from that, the power that you can generate from that, will give you a disproportionate advantage, like relative to the other guys that are on the ice, right?
Which is the flip side to that is you got to feel for those guys that want to get in shape too, that want to work out, right? I remember my kid and even some of the other kids that started here. The best we can do for you is to get you to move properly. You're not going to get stronger. We're very, very minimal. And you're not going to get bigger, but they want to be like their buddies. And that's a challenge, right? And that's where parenting and the surrounding village, per se,
Yeah,
can help.
absolutely. Well, then that's why, again, back to the training thing, that's why when people ask, it's like, I want to sign my 10-year-old up for off ice. And I'm just like, what do you want out of the off ice? Do you want them to get stronger and faster? Because that won't happen.
Yeah. Well, you hear
minimal.
that with parents a lot. He just needs to be faster. It's like,
he can't be yet.
At 8,
right?
9, 10.
You don't,
these aren't the years. Yeah.
And the reason is like that hormone testosterone is so responsible for your recovery, man. It's huge. It's huge for recovery. So that ability to build up, right? It's anabolic for a reason. Like that ability to build up, you don't have it yet. It's not there. So you can see some, but it's like until you have that hormone present, you're not going to see the progress that you want to see, right? So before they're at that age, it's like, yeah, you can get them comfortable moving and stuff, and that's all good, right? Get them athletic, whatever. But, like we just said, you could hit puberty, have a huge growth spurt, and it could just kibosh that anyways, right? And then you have to relearn a lot of stuff. So that's important to know. And then the last one, kind of to touch on from a physical perspective, and this is one that I actually didn't think of when I was doing a little research. I came across this one, is injury susceptibility. So when you start to hit puberty, because things are growing at different rates, it can put you at risk for different kinds of injuries, right? So if you notice, I don't have any particular like anecdotes about that happening or kids I knew that were getting hurt more during puberty years, but it does make sense. You know what I mean? Like your femurs grow, your hamstrings are tighter, like these kinds of things can start happening. Because you're not as coordinated, you're a lot more maybe clumsy, and things can happen where you can get hurt. So that was another one I came across, which I thought was just an interesting one.
I think I have no comment on that.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Because I don't. That didn't affect me at all. I don't have any examples of that, but just something to be thinking about. If you got a kid that isn't just being a baby, if like it seems like they're getting little things, that maybe is something to be looking at. So that's all I had on the physical stuff. Any comments on that? We'll go
No,
to the mental.
I mean, it speaks for itself, I think.
Yeah.
No, I'll deal with that after.
Okay. So mental side, these are the more interesting ones now because the physical things are kind of obvious. So mental, I kind of said at the start, when you're going through puberty, the big two for me are like self-image things, which like not in the weird way, just like self-image things, and then being insecure because like maybe you have acne, maybe you are way bigger than everyone, maybe you stink because now you have body odor and like somebody, you know what I mean? There's all these things that start to come up in those years when you start to change that mentally can be like a stressor.
Or
Right?
you look like Baloney Joe.
Yeah.
Remember Baloney Joe?
I do.
He just
Baloney Joe.
he didn't
Tough.
grow anymore, but like he turned out to be about, you know, he wasn't tall when he hit puberty, and he didn't get any taller, but he had a head like a dump truck and hair and voice, and it was very awkward.
Yeah, right. So that's mentally, that's something that your kid has to deal with, right? And maybe if you have never paid attention to this as parents before, like you weren't in tune with how the puberty thing could affect you or whatever, it's like that is actually a factor that you need to consider now when your kids are interacting, when they're in social situations. It's a weird time when things are changing and you don't know how to deal with that, right? So mentally, that's a big one. With that can come like the emotions, the anger, the moodiness. Maybe you can speak on dealing with a teenager in your house going through this stuff, like some of the changes from younger to that puberty time where things are just like weird now. Like, what is your problem, kid? I can't really speak to that because I'm not
all the time.
Yeah,
you know, we got a daughter and 2 boys, and they're all a little bit different, but they all had their things, and it's like it's unreasonable.
But was it like a black and white change where it was like, okay, this is not how you used to be, and now you're angry and emotional and moody?
They were all different. They're all different. I mean, like one was like, "Geez,
yeah,
what a pain in the ass you are!"
Yeah.
Like that's all you are is a pain in the ass. You know, and then the other 2 were like not bad. But you see differences, and you'll see someone get moody over no reason.
Yeah.
You know, they need more sleep, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And understanding that just from the side of they're going through puberty is useful to know, because then it's like, yeah, okay, you're a pain in my ass, but maybe it'll help you to understand a little bit and kind of help them through like shit's weird right now, right? It's hard to know like how to behave. I see it now with a lot of the classes I teach because I have like the grade 9, 10 time. That's like prime time where everything's weird. Just everything's awkward. The kids are awkward. The boys and girls interacting is awkward. It's just weird. And then the last one, this is probably the most important one that I could think of mentally, was differences in maturity, because you can handle things a lot better with a little bit more maturity than less, right? So whether it's a loss, whether it's criticism, feedback, coaching, parenting instruction, these kinds of things. If you have a little bit more maturity, you might have a little bit of a leg up in terms of handling certain situations. You might be able to think the game a little bit better because you have maturity. You can just see things a little bit more clearly. You start to have a little bit of longer term thinking because you're mature. Maybe not as impulsive on the positive end, obviously talking about this. So that's the other one that I would say plays a lot, is that that maturity thing mentally, where you just start to grow up a little bit and you start to be able to process information a little bit better. So that can give you a leg up mentally. That I think applies more directly to the performance side of things when we're talking about hockey.
Yeah,
right?
but I think I would say yeah and no. This is from my experience, anyways, and also dealing with a lot of kids. I think it's one of the big factors when it comes down to the maturity, is because they just, especially for the guys, the brain's just not. They're dumb. They're dumb guys, right? I'm still dumb, but they just if you can, because they can't reason totally. So the maturity, like I find some kids, it's I think it's again comes down to the village. It comes down to who they're surrounded with. That
100%.
the message is coming across
100%.
the right way, so that you can have the patience to sit down and talk to them and give them a little bit of space to you know. But if you can present cases and present options and present things in a good light, like where you let them think a little bit and try to help them reason, I think it goes a long way. Because you know, the things that my parents or my uncles or whatever people would say when I was 16, 17, I was so much smarter than them, right? There's no reasoning. It's like, nah, I'll figure it out. So it's like being able to like just have them process it, ask questions. Like it's a big thing, and that's another topic,
Well,
right?
I agree 100%. I'm talking more like, so if you take the kid he's a mature young kid before puberty, he hits puberty, he'll just be a little more mature, even though he was already mature. Where the fact that he was already mature, I think, comes to from the environment thing a little bit more. Whereas you have the dumb kid here, where he's not mature at all. He hits puberty, he's still gonna start getting a little more mature. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
it's a process,
from the puberty, right? That was more pointing kind of that out, because if you're a kid that hasn't hit it at all, even obviously some kids are just better than other kids. Like that one kid we had here in the summertime, young kid, he's a really good player, just a little guy. Came from out of town, and like just a mature thinker. Like he hasn't seen puberty for a second yet, but like you can just see it's like, man, you can just think the game, man, right? So obviously it's not so much that
you can
part.
talk to them. You
Yeah,
take things
exactly,
very
right?
serious.
So I don't mean more like the huge environmental changes, but just on an individual level. It's like when you hit puberty, you will be a little bit more able to do those things to whatever level your baseline was at before. It'll just go up slightly from the puberty thing. So that's what I got from the physical mental thing. You got anything else to wrap before we go to like some questions, kind of start wrapping up?
I was going to talk about the mental
Go.
thing, but do we have a question on that?
No, it'll be like different questions.
Yeah, I think it's very important. Like kids, like I think parents can get this for the most part. Like not because, I mean, most people get it, but maybe some people don't, or maybe I take it for granted. But there's a lot of things, and I'm probably leaning more towards the kid that hasn't hit it yet. Like that's his peers are. There's a lot of things that I think parents need to understand is that, well, even for I guess a kid that has hit puberty, but the psychological side, like the confidence, is a big thing. And as you said, if you hit it early, you stick out like a sore thumb. You're different, right? So it's like you could be um, self-conscious about that, but if you haven't, it's like you're the guy that wants to be bigger, stronger, and it's like I think, and I will go into this in a bit. It's the parents having conversations with them to let them know that everything's okay. Like you could be a kid that on the ass end of puberty or the beginning of puberty where you're playing hockey with guys that are maybe 2 years into it, and you're carrying a little bit of belly fat. You still got baby fat, and the boys can be chirping you, right? That's what hockey players do. You're fat. It's not really though. Not really. Hasn't got out of that phase yet. And then you see guys lean out. So it's like I think talking to kids, and then I'll tell you how I do it with after. But I think there's a big confidence thing. There's girls, right? The girls around. It's like you always want to look good for girls, and they don't want to say it. They want to look good in their. I mean, it's little things. You can walk in the dressing room. One guy could wear the tracksuit or whatever, and he looks jacked, and then you're walking and it's hanging off you.
Yeah.
All these little things.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So,
We'll do a couple of like kind of common questions,
Sure.
and then you can do your little wrap up
Yeah.
here. So the first one, just like on the parenting side, I want to talk about kind of how to best support the kid going through like the ups and downs of puberty. So you can use like your own experience as an example, or whatever thoughts come to mind. So from a parenting side, how can you kind of be in that supportive role through that time, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you got, like, to me, the how parents can help is you got to recognize where your kid's at. So I'm talking more as a hockey player. Recognize where he's at.
Right.
I mean, even off the ice.
Yeah, as
right?
a hockey player. Yeah.
As a hockey player, recognize where he's at. So, let me just see something here. Yeah, so recognize where he's at. So, as a hockey player, if you see the kid playing and you notice, like, okay, we're 13 years old and my son, Johnny boy got big, this guy got big. Okay, so like in your own head, you're saying, okay, they're either going to be huge kids or my kid's going to be really small, or something's going on here. So a conversation with your son saying, oh boy, he really grew over the summer, right? You don't have to say like, like when he drops his drawers, does he look like he's got buckwheat in a headlock or in a leg lock? But you can always say questions. Oh, this is son. There's this thing called puberty. There's this thing called or you don't have to say that word. That's weird, right? That's a weird word, puberty. Like, who the hell wants to talk about that? But they talk about a development stage. At some point, guys are gonna get a little hairier, get a little stronger. What that is testosterone gives guys a leg up. Everyone gets it. Some guys are a year or two early. Some guys are a year or two behind. So, if you see on the ice that this guy's really dominating, don't get intimidated by that because he's hit it early. Everyone catches up. Like, you can have those conversations without telling your kid, drop the drawers. Let's see what you got there, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think talking about it early too makes it less awkward later. Like
Yeah.
if you introduce the topic when they're
Yeah.
9, 10,
Yeah,
11.
you don't have to make it
like,
weird.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be weird.
No,
'Cause
you
then
should
when
call it
they're going-
development instead.
Yeah, because then when they're going through it, it's not as
Yeah.
weird because they've heard it before.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like,
General statements. Like for me, I grew up in the hockey world, so I could use back in the day, Charlie. I remember this guy, John, let's say, he developed early. Other guys, Dwayne Pascal, he didn't develop till he was about 38. It happens, and then you see things even out, right? So, but the other thing is to make sure, knowing that. So, say your kid hits it early. Let's say he hits it late. Let's say he's right in the middle. As a parent, or the people, try the best you can is to explain that going back to habits. Right? It's not about scoring the goal. It's not, it's about habits. Are you working hard? Back checking hard? Are you going to the corners hard? Are you making the right plays? Are you willing to do the things that it takes to be a good player? Because skating through people and scoring or shooting from the blue line on a wrist shot and going over the goalie's, the non-puberty goalie's shoulder, it's not actually a real goal. Right? So it's explaining to them, it's not discouraging them. It's encouraging them to do hard. And you know what? Sometimes you might go in the corner, and the kid might you're bigger, and you might smoke him, and you might lay there and cry, and it might hurt your feelings because you hurt someone, or you might think you're a big tough guy. It will even out, son, and then you take it the other way, and you tell the kid, these guys are developing pretty good. You're not physically there yet, but you know what? If you do this and this, this and this, when you catch up, you're going to be a great player, and it's like that encouragement without putting them into the
beautiful.
Yeah.
Next question. What about from the player side? Kind of the things you just applied from the parenting side, but how are ways that you can kind of stay motivated, stay confident when you have to face the challenge of potential discouragement of this guy can just crush me. Like we use the example of you go to do a drill and you're going to lose. And it's that kind of mental thing, right? It's how do you deal with it when you're going to be on the shit end or whatever from the player side?
So I think that's why it's very, I think coaches do have responsibilities in this too. And some will listen and some won't. And some will say, I don't need to, I don't care about that. And that's fine. Not really. But this is where I'm saying this is where you need your surroundings to be very helpful both ways. So if you're the kid that has to work real hard and you're probably going to lose, it's explaining that again. He's physically 2 years old. You keep doing it, and when you catch up, that message has to be told. And then maybe your goal isn't to your goal is to win. Like I say, we have a battle drill. Your goal is to win. But if you're never winning, maybe your goal is to make this harder for him to win. Maybe you're just making this guy frustrated. That's a win, even though you don't think it is, right? Find little victories along the way, even though a 12-year-old will think that's sick. They're stupid, but find those positive and encourage. But again, it goes back to what I'll always say, and I say this to no matter what the hockey player we talk to, solving problems as a hockey player, it's not about goals. It's not. Even Connor McDavid and Connor Bedard, they're all Connors now. It's about goals now, but it's the players that they are isn't just because they can score goals. They do other things very well. It's habits. If you do habits really well, that and you just got to encourage it. So as a parent, if the kid hears, I loved your back checking today, and he goes, yeah, I didn't score. It's yeah, but you took a scoring chance away. You battled on that puck, and they hear the encouragement. That's good. But these kids need to work on their 3, 4 things, 5 things, right? And then work ethic and all that stuff. The other thing that I would say, and this is this is a job of a parent to teach the kid this, I think, is success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. I think you do a huge injustice to your kid if your kid's a late bloomer or an early bloomer and don't explain or find a couple people that were in that situation before. So if I'm an early bloomer or early puberty guy, and my son looks like he's pretty good, you got to point out, okay, so let's take a look at this guy, that were superstars and they were the can't miss prospects. You can find that anywhere. What was the difference, right? So there's guys that can, be superstars at 15, but if you want to continue on this, you have to have good habits. Success leaves clues. And then look at the early bloomers, like the studs that were hairy or whatever at 15, and see what they did. Like there's success stories. Like what did they do? Listen to their words, listen to the interviews, see their habits, right? And then the other side is for the kids that develop later is there's a million clues out there. Look at Johnny Gaudreau. He's not big, there's no way. Well, maybe there's a way he was an early bloomer, but there's a battle there, right? What was the success story there? There's a success story because he overcame certain things. The late, that's what I'm saying about the guys that are late bloomers that have some grit. They're gritty forever. And I love those kids, the late birthday guys and all that stuff. You can look at the Mitch Marners. The Mitch Marners is when he was drafted and stuff, he looked like a little baby, right? Look at to take it to the other extreme is, I think I'm right, is you take a look at Tom Wilson. There's, I think, which I would call like probably an early puberty guy that had a lot of success to the NHL. So it's not like you could be a early bloomer and then you fizzle out at 18. No. His habits, obviously, he ran over guys and he had that nastiness and he carried it with him and he had some skill and he could skate and he kept it going. So like the success leaves clues. Success leaves clues,
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it too, is just find the guy that you think you're like. We talk about that all the time. Modeling your game, you could find that on the development side of it as well. Like who's kind of like you physically, who's kind of where you were at the same age, those kinds of things, right? And then the last one here is
sorry to cut you off. This is why, that's why I said, find a book for your kid or be interested in reading about people. Because what you're going to find is that everybody has a certain amount of adversity, right? Everyone does. Like, I don't know of one person that just played hockey and everything was great all the time. Like there's things. And then, in some of the biographies that you can go and pick up and read, you're just going to find things that it'll resonate with you. That's why I'm like a huge believer and advocate for picking up a book once in a while, or nowadays it could be a podcast, but like you got to listen to them. Like I pick up so much, even being 55 years old, that I go, yes, I need to hear that story for this kid. So like I was listening to Zach Whitecloud talking somewhere. I don't know where I was listening to a podcast. Like that's what a great way to spend your time, learning about something in the craft that you want to be. This guy was just talking about his life, and it's like, okay, that's a story. I could think of 20 kids right now that you need to hear this right now, so that you can just continue to play. Don't get discouraged. Because you didn't get drafted in the OHL, you didn't get a scholarship at 17, doesn't mean nothing. It means nothing. It means something, but it doesn't mean anything. So picking up a book and reading about, like every time a player sees a book that comes out from an NHL hockey player, thumb through it a little bit. And if there's a life story there, you need to read it. You need to read it because, like here's the thing. The other day, I think I mentioned this to you. I could make a prediction. Connor Bedard the other day, there was a thing that came out that he was after practice he was shooting pucks for an hour, right? Came out and everyone was like, "Oh wow!" So my prediction is every parent in the world that has their kid in hockey is going to say, "See, you have to stay out. You got to stay out. You got to stay out." But the real answer is, I'm going to give his parents a lot of credit here. I believe, as I don't think his dad was saying you have to shoot pucks. He's at that level, and this is his craft. This is his goal scoring is his thing, and he takes the time an hour after practice to continue to shoot because he needs to get better. That's something that a kid needs to see, and then when they choose to see that over and over, then they can decide, okay, I got to do that too, not mom and dad. But I think what's going to happen is going to be a lot of parents telling their kids they need to do more. But that's an inherent, that's a thing. But anyways, my point is that you need to see over and over what it actually takes. You need to see Jaromir Jagr talk or read about Jaromir Jagr doing 1,000 push-ups and sit-ups and squats a day. What? Yeah, he's one of the best players in the world. Yeah, and he did it right till he's still playing, man. He's 52. You got to see Sidney Crosby. You got to read that story about how hard he worked and continues to work. Like, kids need to see it so that. But anyways, success leaves clue. That's my point. That's my freaking point.
No, that's great because that goes into the next one too. Is like, I'm thinking of two like quick examples of guys that I played with because I want to use like personal stories that of guys I know. I had one kid, and one is the guy that developed early that fizzled out, which you can have the guy that developed early that makes it, like you pointed out with Tom Wilson. And I had another guy who developed late and made it. And you can have the guys that develop late and don't make it. So it's any four, but I'm picking these two just to give an example. I had one guy I played with who was developed early, and he was just a freak athlete. He was a freak, man. Like, he was at like smashing records at track and field in grade school, like just a freak athlete. And he was way better in hockey when we were young because he was way faster and he could rip the puck. That's why he was better. As we got older, it became very apparent that he couldn't make decisions. He couldn't think the game at all. So he was trying to be things that he wasn't. Like, he was trying to be a high-skilled player when that wouldn't have been his best option. His best option would have been more power forward style because he was a big kid, fast, strong. But because he developed early, he was getting points, etc. And he tried to stick with that and couldn't shake it. So then he ended up getting drafted late when he was expecting that he was going to get drafted early. And then he fizzled out shortly after that. He didn't play. He never ended up playing OHL outside of a few games to start. And then that was it. Then it was over. Then he was done after that. Had another kid that I played with who was November birthday like me. Late, like little boy. And he ended up not in hockey, but in baseball. In baseball, he ended up getting drafted to the Tigers out of college. So he stopped playing hockey through high school after our draft year, whatever, and started focusing on baseball. And then that was perfect for him because it gave him a few more years where he could develop, and he turned into like a really awesome baseball player. And he's played pro now for, let's say, 7 years, right? So he doesn't play in the majors, but he's now had a pretty decent pro career, right, playing baseball. And that was a kid where it was like he was a little boy up until he stopped playing hockey when we kind of went separate ways because he was playing baseball now, right? So you can see like the development curve hits different ways, right? So I don't know if you had any like worth telling personal stories about that or not, because we could just move on.
I've got so many though.
Yeah.
Like, I've got so many, and it's
I think you get the point.
Yeah, you get the point. You say it like I'm so, like, I've got so many. I can go forever.
Yeah. Well, let's close it up then, because I think people kind of get the idea. So any kind of like I think we kind of touched on everything. I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on, or any like little take home things that you want to finish up with before we shut her down.
Yeah, and no. Like, I wrote down. I actually finished with this because I think it was part of your last question. But it was, I think, some names of people, and I used White Cloud as a really good example. I think people should go and read about him and see where that guy came from. But I went back to guys like who made it that wasn't supposed to, but you wouldn't think that now, right? You would never look at it and say, no, there's no way. And I always go back to Arbor Jacki. And I don't know these guys, right? I appreciate them though. And his little brother, his name's Florian, plays for Hamilton. He was drafted in Montreal as well. I don't know these guys, but I like the story because, like, I was talking to a scout last year, and I said, okay, so you guys are so smart, eh? We're joking around. I said, how did 32 teams miss on this guy? I didn't see the first 3 years, right? He said, wow, might have been the worst player in the league. That was Arbor at the time. I said, really? He goes, oh yeah. And then when I've seen his development, he was just a kid. He was a taller kid that he didn't look scary. He didn't look tough. He didn't look anything, but he did what he does now when he had like this is I'm talking about that dog in the fight, that kid that has the grit. You know, he did it when it was hard, right? He went and played hard. He struggled, man. Those first 3 years, they said in all of his scouting career, that guy was the biggest improvement that he's ever seen. And he signed. He said if he would have played, if he didn't sign in Montreal that summer, he said 32 teams would have been offering contracts in September, 100%. Well, obviously, right? But I love the story because, like, look at the disadvantage. And I don't know if it's disadvantage. I don't know the story, right? But parents from Albania um, lived in. I'm assuming rougher parts of Hamilton. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they lived in a mansion. But it seems to be that's the story. Everything had to be like a grind, and mom and dad did everything they could to help their kids. Love their parents. They're a good supportive family. It's all good, right? And from what I've read on what Arbor says about his mom, who's always said, just don't ever stop believing in yourself. And that's like, it's just words sometimes. Just don't like parents say that all the time. But like, I get choked up a little bit, man. Like I love it because that mom just wanted the best for her kid. And that kid took it and he said, okay, if I believe in myself, I'm going to do it. And he just worked his ass off. And he went and he was like, what you were at is Charlie's first game when they played against each other. And it's like, I remember I said, that kid's going to play in the NHL for sure, 100%. He didn't even have a shift yet. And then to see his, so nothing was easy for that kid, right? How did he feel going in as a 17-year-old kid that wasn't drafted and then just getting minutes? And he just worked. It's the story that I love it. And then to see his brother, who I don't know, played against my son a couple times now. There's the book on him. How he's skilled, he's this, he's that, and everyone's got to criticize, man. Everyone's got to find a thing. People make opinions before it's happening. Well, I've seen this kid grow in 1 year a couple inches, and he plays the game hard, and he's a good hockey player. And so there was another one. He was drafted because of his brother. Oh yeah, okay. Go watch his clips. Go watch him play. He's a good hockey player, man. So, like, I'm not here to pump up the family, but like, I love the story. And it's like these kids are they had the grit, and I'll take any day. I'll take that kid that had the grit and didn't have it easy any day, because you know what? As you can see, as they're both catching up physically to their peers, look what happens, right? So that's the encouraging piece to the kid that is a late bloomer or doesn't have it all yet. It's like, it's out there. There's success stories out there, and you got to believe, man. You got to see it. And if this is something that you want, you got to do it. And then, of course, obviously, it's the same thing for the early bloomers, is understanding that this is maybe an advantage, but take the advantage and run, right?
Yeah.
So that's my end.
No, that's great, man. I think we kind of dovetailed the puberty thing in a little bit with the early late bloomer thing, because obviously there's a lot of crossover there. So
it dovetails.
Hopefully, yeah, dovetails. It's a good word. Yeah. So that's good. So we'll end it off there, and we'll see you guys all next week.